Welcome to Black Scorpion's review. In this review we'll be looking at G&G's L85A2, L85 carbine and
the L85 AFV. First impressions when you pick them up, obviously they're extremely weighty, they're very solid, the finish is extremely good, everything's very crisp, everything looks nicely done. The trademarks are nicely subtle so they don't stand out overly on the gun. It's got a set of trades on here, it's the same on all three. Basically it feels like a really quality piece of equipment, nice and solid, unlikely to ever break.
compared to the real thing, this is very realistic. You'd be hard pressed to tell it from the original. I don't get to use the real thing every day, but I do get to play with it every now and then. Initially, there's hardly anything you can tell on this that's different from the real thing. Even the weight, these do come in about 900 grams lighter than the real thing, but to be honest, I couldn't really tell until I actually looked up the weights. Everything's made of steel, so again, it's just like the real thing. The finish, other than not being bad, looks just like the real thing. All your bits and pieces, your dust cover and your cock and handle, everything's the same. They even went to the trouble of putting in the gas tube parts as well, which is a nice touch, and a heat shield there.
Coloration of all the plastic on the bodywork is as realistic as it gets. I mean, we can't tell that it's different. You certainly wouldn't without putting them side by side. The butt pad's made of rubber like the real thing. It's got the cheek piece and everything else. It feels at first touch exactly like a real one. The AFV is built from the front to the back here, pretty much the same as the other two. They're made of pressed steel with some cast parts and mostly steel accessories such as the pins, the magazine release catch, the flash hider, trigger guard and such. It makes it extremely solid. It's not like any of the cast receiver guns that you normally come across. When you pick this up, there's no shake to it, no wobble, nothing squeaks, creaks or is loose in any way. It's extremely solid.
As we mentioned before, with regard to weight, although these things are pretty heavy, heavier than your average AEG, they are a little bit lighter than the real thing, although that might not necessarily be a bad thing. It balances very similar to the real one because it's a bullpup. However, the main thing you'll notice is there is more weight to the rear on this than there is on the real thing. Obviously this is down to the gearbox being at the back, a much larger chunk of metal than you would normally have tucked away at the back here.
It does give the illusion that it's lighter because the majority of the weight will be resting on your shoulder. It's especially prevalent in the AFV because there's very little in front of your grip. You're going to have both hands supporting it right at the front. Everything's going to sit at the back.
It's very comfortable to hold. Again, like the real thing, you wouldn't have any trouble. I think because of the way it's weighted, a similar weighted gun, say you had an M16 that was the same weight, would be much harder to run around with and would take a bigger toll on you than this would.
In terms of ergonomics, this gun is slightly different to a normal Armalite. Obviously it's a bullpup, which means to access the mag release catch you have to use the hand you're releasing, going to be pulling the mag out with. You can't pop the mag and just drop them on the floor or do quick mag changes. You have to bring up your hand, release it like that. That's something that some people will find a little bit awkward. It may not be to your taste, but it's just something that once you get used to it, it's not a problem. The other ergonomic factor, obviously, which is unique to the L85, is it's got the fire selector at the rear. Again, this means if you want to change fire modes, rather than flicking it with a finger at the front, you have to come to the rear and actively move it. Safety is operated at the front by a through pin. Left to right is safe, right to left is fire.
Using your trigger finger to take it off safe.
Yeah, trigger finger off. You can't access this with your thumb to do it with the same hand.
Not unless you're a freak.
Yeah, you have to do it with an off hand. Same thing with the mag change, that has to be done with your off hand. Takes a little bit of getting used to, but it's not a bad thing. It's a bullpup anyway, you don't have access to it from the front. The fire selector is at the rear, with up being repetition, which is semi-automatic, the down is automatic. In terms of ergonomics, this is a slight issue in that the gun can have a tendency to get flipped onto a single shot if you're moving it around against your kit.
The difference between the three of these isn't massive. I mean, between the A2 and the carbine, the length is only a couple of inches shorter. There's not a great deal in it. When we looked at the weight on these as well, they were hardly anything apart. It was a couple of 100 grams at the most. But you may find that if you're shorter, the carbine is a little easier to wield. I mean, they're both really short to start with. Even the full length one, it's shorter than an M4. But because it's a bullpup, it's got an M16 length barrel in it, which makes it pretty handy outdoors. But because it's tiny, it's still good indoors as well. Especially with the AFE, which is by far the shortest. I mean, this is probably one of the shortest full AEGs I've ever come across. You can see the size difference there. I mean, it's shorter than a CQBR, UMG, anything tiny like that. It really is a tiny gun. And again, if you're particularly short, you should find this really comfortable. If you've got longer arms, you might get a bit of a strain using this all day on your offhand. I definitely would recommend a vertical grip or a grip of some description to use with this one.
In spite of being really short, the AFE comes in almost the same weight as the other two. This is because it's got quite a solid front block section with this custom RIS that it has. The RIS contains just about 2 inches or so of rail, which is enough to fit a torch on here or a laser, and then obviously underneath you've got this section which is going to be the best place for putting a grip of some kind. It does feel incredibly strong. There's nothing about this that's weak in any way. I mean, it's a very, very heavy, thick piece of metal which isn't going to break anytime soon.
When it comes to batteries, these guns can actually take quite big batteries. The standard model, the L85 A2, doesn't take a large battery as such, but it will take a custom sized large battery. The configuration is a 6x2 cells, and you have a satellite cell which runs around the front. So I mean, I've seen 4,000 milliamp batteries used in these at 8.4 volts, so pretty big. And if you're a LiPo user, you can get a pretty large LiPo into this one. In order to get the battery in there, there's a screw here which undoes the sling attachment on the other side. Once that's apart, you slide one half of this forward and it comes off. You have to open up the top cover as well. The carbine works in the same way. You won't be able to have a large size battery with a satellite cell in this one because you haven't got the room at the front. However, again, if you're a LiPo user, no problems at all. We've managed to fit a 9.6 volt mini into this one as well with no problems. It works exactly the same as the regular model, with the screw being undone here, taking the sling ring off this side, and sliding the half apart.
Finally, with the AFE, this is a slightly different gun in that there is no foregrip on this one, so it's not possible to put a battery in front, so they've had to create a custom solution on this. To change a battery on the L85 AFE, you actually have to remove the upper from the lower receiver to access it, which is done by removing this rear pin here. I'll demonstrate. Battery's connected direct to the gun. There's no fuse box on this one. Put the lowest one side. And to get at the battery, it's housed above the inner barrel here, up inside the receiver. So to actually get at it, you have to remove the inner barrel. It's a little bit stiff because there's a small clip here that retains it into the barrel. Just pull that out. And then out comes the battery. It takes a custom nickel metal hydride made by G&G or a mini LiPo. These are the ones that advertisers going in stock tubes of Armalites. So it's the smallest stick one that's available, but it sits in quite comfortably. One thing to note quickly as well with the AFE is the fact that it has no inner barrel here. On the other two, the barrel runs right the way through here. But it's such a short gun that that's the only way they could fit the battery.
Another nice feature that G&G have included with all their weapons is that you can release the spring tension. A lot of weapons that we see, you finish firing them, the cycle doesn't finish at the end, so your spring's under tension. You might leave it in your gun bag for a couple of weeks, maybe even a month. By the time you come to your weapon again, you're going to have quite a loss of FPS. So what G&G have done to remedy this situation is they've added a little lever in here. Just inside the mag while you reach up, press in there, that releases the anti-reversal latch and allows the gears to turn backwards. This means that all the tension is relieved from the weapon, allowing you to have the same FPS the next time you use it.
Especially useful with their two L85, A1 and A2 models, which have the pre-cocking system in them, which every time you fire it on single shot will return the piston fully to the rear, ready for the next shot. So when you finish using it on single shot, you have to use that spring release, otherwise you would end up with a really heavily compressed piston.